The debris field stretched for kilometers, a graveyard of twisted metal and shattered dreams floating in the void. Jaren Cross guided his salvage ship, the Wanderer's Hope, through the wreckage with practiced ease, his amber eyes scanning for anything valuable enough to pay for next month's fuel. "Another corporate war gone wrong," he muttered, his fingers dancing across the holographic controls. Beside him, Tico, his sleek black cat with cybernetic silver eyes, meowed softly, tail twitching with feline curiosity. The augmented feline had been his companion for 3 years now, ever since Jaren had pulled him from a similar wreck on the Outer Rim. The scanner beeped, highlighting a section of what appeared to be a military transport. Jaren adjusted course, bringing the Wanderer's Hope alongside the broken hull. Probably stripped clean already, but let's take a look anyway. He suited up, checking his oxygen levels twice, a habit from his days in the colonial fleet before everything went wrong. Before Sienna. He pushed the memory away, focusing on the airlock cycle as Tico watched from his perch, cyber eyes glowing in the dim cabin light. The transport's interior was worse than he'd expected. Blast marks scorched the walls and the emergency lighting flickered weakly, casting eerie shadows. Jaren moved carefully, mag boots keeping him anchored as he floated through the zero-gravity corridors. That's when he heard it, a sound so faint he almost missed it over his own breathing. A whimper. No, not quite that. More like a plea, wordless but desperate. Following the sound, Jaren found her in what remained of the medical bay. She was huddled beneath a thermal blanket, and even from here he could see something was terribly wrong. The blanket covered most of her body, but her face was visible, delicate features that were almost human, except for the faint iridescent scaling along her temples and the way her skin seemed to shimmer with an inner light that pulsed weakly, like a dying star. "I'm beyond saving," she whispered, her voice carrying an accent he couldn't place, melodic despite the pain that threaded through every syllable. Her eyes, large and violet with vertical pupils, fixed on him with heartbreaking clarity. "Please, don't look. Just end it quickly." Jaren's chest tightened. He'd seen plenty of death in his years salvaging the aftermath of conflicts he wanted no part of. Usually he could distance himself, treat it as just another harsh reality of life in the outer sectors. But something about her voice, the resignation mixed with lingering hope, struck a chord he thought had gone silent years ago. "Let me see," he said softly, kneeling beside her despite the warning in her eyes. "No. Please!" She tried to protest, but her voice broke. "I'm broken. Ruined. There's nothing left to save." Jaren gently pulled back the blanket, and his breath caught in his throat. She wore the remnants of what had been combat armor, but it had been peeled away in places, revealing the extent of her injuries. Her body, humanoid but distinctly alien with skin that normally would probably glow with bioluminescence, was wrong, crushed. Her right arm bent at an impossible angle, her legs clearly shattered, and the way her torso curved. Internal damage, severe the Velari. He recognized her species now from the scaling pattern and the bioluminescent nodes along her spine that flickered weakly. They were rare this far from their home system, known for being warriors and scholars in equal measure. What was she doing on a transport in contested space? "What's your name?" he asked, his tactical mind already calculating what he'd need to stabilize her for transport back to his ship. "Nisara," she breathed. "But it doesn't matter." "I can't!" she cried out as pain lanced through her, the bioluminescent nodes along her visible skin flaring bright blue before dimming again. "Every bone. Everything is broken. Please, just let me go." Jaren pulled out his portable medical scanner, running it over her body. The readings made him wince. Compound fractures in both legs, shattered ribs, collapsed lung, spinal damage. The list went on. By all rights, she should already be dead. Only her species' remarkable constitution was keeping her conscious. "I'm getting you out of here," he said firmly. "Why?" Nisara's violet eyes searched his face, confusion mixing with the pain. "You don't know me. I'm nothing to you. Just another casualty in someone else's war." "Maybe," Jaren admitted, already preparing an injection of universal painkillers from his emergency kit. But I'm not in the habit of leaving people to die when I can help. Call it a character flaw. Humans, she whispered, something almost like a smile touching her lips before another wave of pain made her gasp. Always so stubborn. You have no idea, Jaren said, administering the injection. This is going to hurt like hell, but it'll keep you stable until I get you to my ship. I've got a medical pod that should be able to handle your physiology. As the medication took effect, Nisara's eyes began to flutter closed. The others? She asked weakly. Jaren had seen the bodies throughout the ship. I'm sorry. A single tear traced down her cheek, glowing faintly blue. Then, why save me? He carefully began preparing her for transport, working to immobilize her broken limbs as gently as possible. Because someone once told me that one life saved can make a difference. I didn't believe it then. He met her fading gaze. Maybe I'm hoping to now. Nisara's consciousness wavered as Jaren lifted her with exquisite care, using his suit's strength assist to keep her stable. Through the haze of pain and medication, she felt something she hadn't expected. Genuine compassion, radiating from this scarred human with sad eyes and gentle hands. Thank you, she breathed before darkness took her. Jaren carried her through the wreckage back to his ship, where Tico immediately began chirping and circling them anxiously. Yeah, buddy, I know. I'm probably insane. He laid Nisara carefully in the medical pod, programming it for Valari physiology based on what little he knew about her species. As the pod sealed and began its work, Jaren slumped into his pilot's chair, suddenly exhausted. Tico jumped into his lap, purring, a synthesized sound from his cyber enhancements, but comforting nonetheless. What have I gotten us into? Jaren murmured, stroking the cat's sleek fur while watching the readouts from the medical pod. Nisara's vital signs were stabilizing, but the extent of her injuries, she had weeks, maybe months of recovery ahead. If she recovered at all, the logical thing would be to take her to the nearest station, drop her at a medical facility, and walk away. That's what the old Jaren, the one before Sienna died, before he became this hollow salvager picking through other people's tragedies, would have done. But looking at Nisara's face through the pod's transparent cover, seeing the way even unconscious she seemed to be bracing for pain, Jaren knew he wouldn't abandon her. Looks like it's going to be an interesting journey. Tico, he said, setting course for his hidden repair station 3 systems away. Somewhere he could work on Nisara's recovery without attracting unwanted attention. As the Wanderer's Hope jumped to hyperspace, leaving the debris field behind, Jaren didn't notice the small tracking beacon that had attached itself to his hull or the encrypted transmission it sent into the void, marking their trajectory. Somewhere in the darkness, hunters were already moving. The repair station hung in the shadow of a dead moon, invisible to most scanners and known only to a handful of salvagers who valued their privacy. Jaren had discovered it 5 years ago, an abandoned mining outpost that he'd slowly converted into a refuge. It wasn't much, but it was home. Tico prowled the corridors as Jaren transferred Nisara from the ship's medical pod to the station's more sophisticated medical suite. 3 days had passed since he'd found her, and while her vital signs had stabilized, she hadn't regained consciousness. The automated systems had begun the slow work of repairing her shattered bones, using a combination of stem cell treatments and bioregenerative scaffolding. Come on, Nisara, Jaren murmured, adjusting the neural monitors. You're stronger than this. I can see it. Her bioluminescent nodes pulsed weakly, the light beneath her skin flickering like distant stars. According to his research, hours spent diving through medical databases and xenobiology texts, Valari used bioluminescence for communication and emotional expression. The fact that hers still functioned meant something vital remained intact. He'd learned other things, too. The Valari were an ancient species, their culture built around concepts of honor and spiritual connection. They formed deep bonds quickly, their telepathic abilities making them highly empathic. They were also incredibly rare, their population devastated by a plague decades ago that had left them scattered across the galaxy. What had brought Nisara to that transport? Why had she been alone? Jaren was checking her fluid levels when her eyes suddenly snapped open, glowing an intense violet. Before he could react, a pressure exploded in his mind, not painful but overwhelming. Images flooded through him. A battle station under siege. Screams echoing through corridors. Nisara fighting desperately alongside others of her kind. An explosion, falling, crushing weight, darkness. And then, his face looking down at her with concern instead of disgust. "Stop!" Jaren gasped, staggering backward, his hands pressed to his temples. The pressure vanished instantly. Nisara's eyes widened with horror, her bioluminescent patterns flaring bright orange. Distress, he now knew. "I'm sorry." "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean—" She tried to sit up and cried out as pain lanced through her still-healing body. "Don't move," Jaren said quickly, steadying himself and moving back to her side. "Your bones are still knitting. The regeneration process takes time." Nisara's breathing came in short gasps, her skin cycling through colors, orange distress fading to purple confusion with flickers of blue pain. "You're real. This isn't a fever dream. You actually saved me?" "Told you I would," Jaren said, pulling up a chair beside her bed. Tico jumped up onto his lap, eyeing Nisara with curious silver optics. "But why?" Nisara's voice cracked. "I'm nobody. A failed warrior who couldn't even protect her own unit. I begged you to let me die and you—" She turned her face away, light dimming to a soft gray. "You should have listened." Jaren was quiet for a moment, stroking Tico's synthetic fur. 3 years ago, my partner, her name was Sienna, we were exploring a derelict station. There was an accident, explosive decompression. I tried to reach her, but— He swallowed hard. I was too slow. She died asking me to tell her family she loved them. I never did. Couldn't face them. Couldn't face failing her. Nisara turned back to look at him, her violet eyes glistening. "So when I found you," Jaren continued, meeting her gaze, "maybe I saw a chance to not fail this time? Selfish, probably. But there it is." "That's not selfish," Nisara whispered. "That's grief-seeking redemption." Her bioluminescent patterns shifted to a soft pink, gratitude mixed with something warmer. "Among my people, we call it soul debt. You've bound yourself to my survival. I didn't mean to—" "I know." A small smile touched her lips. "Humans rarely understand what they do to others. You broadcast emotions so loudly, yet you're blind to your own impact." She hesitated. "What you felt when you touched my mind—" "I didn't mean to intrude. My telepathic barriers are weakened. Everything is bleeding through." Jaren leaned forward. "What did you see? In my mind?" Nisara's colors flickered. Hesitation, a deep blue violet that seemed almost intimate. "Loneliness. Such profound loneliness. You've been adrift for so long, pushing everyone away. And underneath it all," she looked directly at him, "you're terrified of caring again." The accuracy of her observation struck him like a physical blow. Yeah, I guess I am." "I understand," Nisara said softly. "When my unit was slaughtered, when I felt each of their minds extinguished through our telepathic link, I wanted to die too. The pain of their loss was crushing, more than any physical injury." Her hand moved slightly, reaching toward him despite the pain it caused. "But you didn't let me give up. You carried me through the darkness." Jaren found himself taking her hand, carefully, mindful of her still fragile bones. Her skin was warm, the bioluminescent patterns beneath pulsing gently at his touch. The sensation was electric, sending tingles up his arm. "Is that normal?" he asked, startled. Nisara's colors shifted to a deep magenta, embarrassment mixed with something else. "Valari are tactile empaths. Physical contact allows us to share emotions, sensations. It's intimate." She tried to pull her hand back, but Jaren held on gently. "I don't mind," he said, surprising himself with the truth of it. They stayed like that. Hands joined while something unspoken passed between them. Through the connection, Jaren felt what she felt. The ache of healing bones. The exhaustion of her body, but also warmth, hope. A tentative reaching out toward connection after being certain she'd die alone. "This is dangerous," Nisara breathed. Valari bond quickly, especially during recovery. Our empathic abilities seek anchors, sources of strength. If we're not careful, I could form an attachment that— Would that be so terrible? Jaren asked quietly. Nisara's eyes widened, her colors rippling through shades of pink and magenta. You don't know what you're saying. A Valari bond is permanent. It's not like human relationships that can end. Once formed, it's written into our neural pathways. We're connected for life. And you think I'm not capable of that kind of commitment? I think you're already running from it, Nisara said gently. I can feel it in you, the urge to pull away, to protect yourself. You saved me, Jaren, but you're not ready to save yourself. The truth of her words stung, but he didn't let go of her hand. Maybe that's why I need you to heal. So you can kick my ass into actually dealing with my problems. Despite herself, Nisara laughed, a sound like wind chimes that made Tico's ears perk up. Humans are so strange. You face down death without hesitation, but emotional honesty terrifies you. We're a complicated species, Jaren admitted with a wry smile. Over the following days, they fell into a rhythm. Jaren would check her medical readings each morning, adjusting treatments and monitoring her bone regeneration. Nisara would practice the mental exercises needed to rebuild her telepathic barriers, though she admitted she enjoyed the moments when those barriers slipped and she could feel his presence in her mind. They talked for hours. Jaren told her about his childhood on New Terra, about joining the colonial fleet, about meeting Sienna and the dreams they'd shared before everything fell apart. Nisara spoke of her homeworld Velar Prime, the crystalline cities that sang with bioluminescent light, the warrior-scholar traditions of her people, and the plague that had scattered them across the stars. We're both survivors of dying worlds, Nisara observed one evening as Jaren helped her sit up for the first time. Her legs were still too weak to bear weight, but the progress was remarkable. Seems like we have more in common than we thought, Jaren agreed, his hands supporting her back. Through the contact, he felt a surge of pride from her. She was sitting up, a milestone in her recovery, mixed with something warmer that made his pulse quicken. Jaren, Nisara said softly, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to deep magenta. When you touch me, I feel— I haven't felt this way since before the plague. Before I lost my bondmate, he stilled. You were bonded before? To another warrior, Kellyan. He died in the first wave of the plague. Her colors dimmed with grief. I thought I'd never want to bond again. The pain of losing him was too great. But you— She turned her head to look at him, violet eyes intense. You make me want to try. To risk that pain again? Jaren's heart hammered in his chest. Nisara! Tico suddenly yowled, his cyber eyes flashing red, the warning mode Jaren had programmed. Both of them froze. What is it? Nisara asked, her empathic senses suddenly extending outward. Jaren was already moving to the monitors, pulling up the station's external sensors. What he saw made his blood run cold. 3 ships had just dropped out of hyperspace, their configurations matching bounty hunter vessels. We've got company, he said grimly. And they're heading straight for us. Nisara's colors shifted to combat orange, her body tensing despite her injuries. They've found me. Jaren, you need to run. Leave me here. I won't let you— Not a chance. Jaren cut her off, already moving toward the weapons locker. I didn't pull you from that wreck just to abandon you now. You'll die protecting me. He turned to face her, his expression fierce. Then I'll die doing something that matters. Better than drifting alone through the void waiting for nothing. Their eyes locked, and through the empathic connection still thrumming between them, Nisara felt the absolute certainty of his conviction. He wouldn't run. Couldn't run. Not from this, not from her. You beautiful, stubborn fool, she whispered, her colors blazing bright pink. I think I'm already bonding with you. Jaren crossed back to her, cupping her face gently. Good, because I'm not letting anyone take you from me. He kissed her then, a desperate, fierce kiss that sent shock waves through both of them. For Nisara, the physical contact combined with the emotional intensity triggered a cascade of bioluminescence, her entire body lighting up like a supernova. For Jaren, feeling her emotions flood through him was like coming alive after years of numbness. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, alarms were wailing throughout the station. Time to see what a human salvager and a half-healed Valari warrior can do against some bounty hunters, Jaren said with a grim smile. Nisara's colors shifted to battle orange, determination blazing in her eyes despite her weakened state. Together, Jaren agreed. As he helped her into a mobility chair and began preparing their defenses, neither of them noticed Tico's. Cyber eyes had changed from warning red to a soft pink, the color he'd been programmed to display around Sienna back when Jaren had still believed in love. The cat, at least, knew what was happening. The lead bounty hunter's ship docked with Jaren's station with a metallic clang that reverberated through the corridors. Jaren had sealed Nisara in the reinforced medical bay with Tico, giving her access to the station's defensive systems while he prepared to meet their uninvited guests. I count 6 life signs. Nisara's voice crackled through his calm, her telepathic abilities giving her an edge even through walls. The leader is cold, calculating. His name is Vorek Tom. I'm pulling emotions of greed, but also something darker. Obsession. Jaren checked his pulse rifle, making sure it was fully charged. What's he obsessed with? A pause. Me. Not just for the bounty. He wants to collect me like a trophy. Disgust colored her voice, her bioluminescent patterns visible. Through the medical bay's camera feeds, flickering angry red. Well, he can't have you, Jaren said flatly, positioning himself behind a support column with clear sight lines to the airlock. The inner door cycled open, and Vorek Tam stepped through. He was Kethrin, a reptilian species known for their patience and cunning. His scales were deep emerald, almost black, and his yellow eyes swept the corridor with predatory focus. 5 heavily armed mercenaries followed him, a mix of species united by credits and lack of conscience. Jaren Cross. Vorek's voice was sibilant, like wind through dead leaves. Salvager, former colonial fleet, dishonorably discharged after the Sienna Marks incident. Currently wanted for nothing, which makes your interference with my business puzzling. Your business? Jaren called out, not revealing his position yet. Hunting wounded warriors? That's bottom-feeder work, even for a bounty hunter. Vorek's tongue flickered out, tasting the air. The Valari female is worth more than you'll see in 10 lifetimes of picking through wreckage. Her genetic code contains mapping data for ancient Valari sacred sites, locations of technological caches that would make whoever controls them very wealthy, very powerful. Through his calm, Jaren heard Nisara's sharp intake of breath. He's telling the truth, she whispered. I didn't know. The elders. They must have encoded it in me as a safeguard. That's why the transport was attacked. That's why everyone died. Jaren's grip tightened on his rifle. She wasn't just a survivor. She was a treasure map written in living flesh. Here's my offer, Cross, Vorek continued, his mercenaries spreading out through the corridor with professional efficiency. Walk away. I'll even pay you for your trouble. 10,000 credits for the inconvenience. The female comes with me, and you go back to your lonely existence. Everyone wins. Except Nisara, Jaren replied. The female is property, encoded by her own people for a purpose. She has no say in the matter. Wrong answer! Jaren fired, his pulse bolt taking down the nearest mercenary before anyone could react. Then chaos erupted. The mercenaries returned fire, their weapons tearing chunks from the walls as Jaren ducked and weaved through the station's corridors. He knew every inch of this place, every hiding spot and ambush point. He led them deeper, away from the medical bay. "Jaren!" Nisara's voice in his comm was urgent. "Two of them split off. They're heading for me." "Lock it down," he ordered, dropping. A flashbang behind him that sent two more mercenaries sprawling. "I'm coming." But Vorek was faster than he looked. The Kethron appeared from a side corridor, blocking Jaren's path, a vibro blade gleaming in his clawed hand. Predictable. Humans always choose sentiment over survival. They clashed, Vorek's blade scraping against Jaren's rifle as he used it to block. The Kethron was strong, his reptilian muscles designed for explosive power. Jaren was faster, his years in the fleet teaching him to fight dirty. He slammed his elbow into Vorek's throat, buying himself space to bring the rifle up. But Vorek twisted, tail whipping around to knock Jaren's legs out from under him. They went down together, grappling on the cold deck plating. "She'll be mine," Vorek hissed, his breath hot and rank. "I've been tracking her for months. Every dead Valari I found brought me closer. She's the last one who carries the complete genetic sequence." Jaren's blood ran cold. "You killed them. You've been hunting down the survivors." "Harvesting them," Vorek corrected. "But they only had fragments. She has everything." His blade pressed against Jaren's throat. "You should have taken my offer." A pulse bolt suddenly punched through Vorek's shoulder, sending him sprawling with a screech of pain. Jaren looked up to see Nisara in her mobility chair, holding a weapon with shaking hands, her face determined despite her obvious weakness. "Nobody harvests my people," she said, her bioluminescent patterns blazing combat orange. "Not anymore." Jaren scrambled to his feet as alarms blared through the station. Through the monitoring systems, he saw the two mercenaries who'd been heading for the medical bay lying unconscious, Tico standing over them, his cybernetic enhancements crackling with residual stun charge. "Good cat," Jaren muttered. Vorek was already recovering, his Kethron physiology healing the wound at an accelerated rate. "Foolish female. You're too weak to fight, and your human pet can't protect you forever." "He's not my pet," Nisara said, her voice ringing with authority. "He's my bondmate." The declaration sent a visible ripple of bioluminescence across her skin, and through the empathic connection they'd been building, Jaren felt it, the bond snapping into place, permanent and unbreakable. Her presence in his mind solidified, not invasive but welcoming, like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. Vorek's eyes narrowed. "Impossible. The bond ritual takes days. It requires truth," Nisara interrupted. "Recognition of souls. We've had that from the moment he refused to let me die." She looked at Jaren, her violet eyes glowing. "I feel what you feel. Your determination, your fear, your love." The word hung in the air between them, and Jaren knew with absolute certainty that it was true. Somehow, impossibly, he'd fallen in love with this warrior from the stars in the span of days. Or maybe he'd been falling since the moment he'd pulled back that blanket and chosen compassion over convenience. "I love you too," he said simply. The admission sent another wave of bioluminescence through Nisara, and suddenly, Jaren understood. The bond wasn't just emotional. It was giving him access to her telepathic abilities. He could feel the remaining mercenaries throughout the station, their intentions clear as day. "Behind you," they said in unison, both turning and firing at the mercenary who'd tried to sneak up on them. Vorek stared at them, comprehension dawning. "You've created a combat bond, human neural plasticity combined with Valari telepathy." He laughed, a cold sound. "Fascinating. The research value alone would be worth—" "We're not research subjects," Jaren cut him off. "And you're not leaving this station." Through their bond, he and Nisara moved in perfect synchronization. She used her telepathic abilities to predict the mercenaries' movements, while he used his tactical training to counter them. They were a perfect complement, her intuition and his experience forming something greater than the sum of their parts. Within minutes, the remaining mercenaries were down, stunned or disarmed. Only Vorek remained, his yellow eyes darting between them as he calculated odds that were rapidly turning against him. "You can't win," he hissed. "Even if you defeat me, others will come. The genetic data in her cells is too valuable. Every crime syndicate, every corporate interest, every government with ambition will hunt her." "Then we'll deal with them too," Jaren said. "Together!" Vorek lunged, a desperate final attack, but he was too slow. Nisara's telepathic warning gave Jaren a split-second advantage, enough to sidestep and bring his rifle down on the Kethran's skull. Vorek collapsed, unconscious. In the sudden silence, Jaren became acutely aware of Nisara's ragged breathing, the way her bioluminescent patterns were dimming. She'd pushed herself too hard, too soon. "Hey," he said softly, kneeling beside her chair. "You okay?" "Exhausted," she admitted, her hand finding his. "But alive. Because of you. Because of us," Jaren corrected. Through their bond, he felt her bone-deep weariness, but also her fierce joy. They'd survived. Together. Tico padded over, rubbing against both of them, his per-motor rumbling contentedly. Jaren scooped up the cat with his free hand, holding both of them close. "What do we do now?" Nisara asked. Vorek was right. "Others will come." Jaren looked at the unconscious bounty hunter, then at the woman who'd somehow become his entire world in less than a week. "We run. There are places even bounty hunters can't reach. Deep space stations, neutral zones. We'll find somewhere safe. A lifetime of running?" He met her eyes. "A lifetime together." "That doesn't sound so bad." Nisara's colors shifted to soft pink, her exhaustion giving way to warmth. "No, it doesn't." As Jaren began the process of securing their prisoners and preparing the station for lockdown, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not just for survival, but for actually living. For building something with someone who saw past his failures to the man he could still become. Through their bond, Nisara felt his thoughts and sent back waves of reassurance and affection. They had each other now. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. "Jaren," she said as he helped her back toward the medical bay. "Thank you. For not giving up on me. For seeing worth in someone who'd given up on herself." He kissed her forehead gently. "Thank you for teaching me I could still feel something other than loss." Behind them, Vorek began to stir, but Tico sat guard, his cyber eyes gleaming with protective vigilance. The cat understood what Jaren and Nisara were still learning. That family wasn't always born. Sometimes it was chosen. Sometimes it was pulled from wreckage and given a second chance, and sometimes against all odds. That second chance became everything. The neutral port station known as Haven's Edge existed in legal limbo, claimed by 3 different governments but controlled by none. It was a place where questions weren't asked and credits spoke louder than laws. Jaren had docked the Wanderer's Hope here 3 days after escaping Vorek, using false credentials and enough bribes to ensure their privacy. Nisara's recovery had accelerated dramatically since the bond formed. According to the medical scans Jaren ran obsessively, her bone density was returning to normal ahead of schedule, and her telepathic abilities were stronger than ever. But the scans couldn't measure what mattered most. The way she smiled more easily now. The way her bioluminescent patterns stayed in warm pinks and golds instead of the gray despair he'd first seen. "You're staring again," Nisara said, not opening her eyes. She was resting on the bed in their rented quarters, her body still needing frequent recuperation periods. Tico was curled up beside her, the cat having fully adopted her as part of his chosen family. "Can you blame me?" Jaren replied from where he sat reviewing their dwindling finances on a data pad. "You're literally glowing." She opened one violet eye, her lips quirking in amusement. "Flatterer. My people always glow, not like this." He set the data pad aside and moved to sit beside her. "When I first found you, your light was almost gone. Now you're like a living constellation." Nisara's patterns brightened to deep magenta. The color he'd learned meant she was feeling particularly affectionate. "That's the bond. Volari luminescence reflects our emotional state. When we're loved, we shine brighter." Good thing I love you then, Jaren said, leaning down to kiss her. The kiss deepened, their bond amplifying every sensation. Jaren felt what she felt, the warmth spreading through her, the acceleration of her heartbeat, the desire that mirrored his own. It was intoxicating, this connection, being so intimately aware of another person's experience. Jaren, Nisara breathed against his lips, her hands sliding under his shirt. I'm healed enough. Are you sure? He pulled back slightly, concerned. The medical protocols said, forget the protocols. Her eyes glowed brighter, her whole body beginning to radiate light. I'm sure. I need this. Need you. He didn't need their telepathic bond to feel the truth of her words, but it helped. Through their connection, he felt her absolute certainty. Her desire, and underneath it all, her deep need to reclaim her body, to experience pleasure instead of pain, connection instead of violation. They made love slowly. Carefully at first, Jaren hyper-aware of her still healing body. But Nisara pulled him closer, deeper, her bioluminescence filling the room with cascading colors that reflected their shared pleasure. Through the bond, sensation doubled. He felt his touch on her skin from both perspectives, felt her pleasure as his own, felt the moment their souls truly merged into something transcendent. When it was over, they lay tangled together, Nisara's patterns pulsing with soft golden light, Jaren's heartbeat gradually slowing to match hers. That was, he started, struggling to find words. Bonded intimacy, Nisara finished, tracing patterns on his chest. For Valari, physical union with a bondmate is sacred. We become one being temporarily. Did you feel it? I felt everything, Jaren said, awed. Your joy, your pleasure, your everything. Is it always like that? With a bondmate, yes. She propped herself up on one elbow, studying his face. Are you afraid? Some non-Valari find the intensity overwhelming. Jaren cupped her face, watching the colors dance beneath her skin. I'm not afraid. I've never felt more connected to anything in my life. It's just... He hesitated. I wish I'd found you before I became this broken thing. You're not broken, Nisara said firmly. You're healing just like me. We're healing each other. A sharp knock on the door interrupted them. Jaren tensed, immediately reaching for the weapon he kept beside the bed, but Nisara placed a calming hand on his arm. It's not hostile, she said, her telepathic senses extended. Female, cautious but not aggressive. She's familiar somehow. Jaren dressed quickly and approached the door, checking the security feed. A woman stood outside, human, middle-aged, with sharp features and calculating eyes. She wore the nondescript clothing of someone trying not to be noticed. Who are you? Jaren called through the intercom. My name is Kella, the woman replied. I'm a merchant of information. I have something you need. Not interested. Even if it's about the genetic data encoded in your Valari companion? About who really wants it and why? Kella's expression was neutral, but her words hit like a pulse blast. Jaren exchanged glances with Nisara, who had wrapped herself in a sheet and moved to his side. Through their bond, he felt her curiosity warring with caution. Let her in, Nisara said quietly. But keep your weapon ready. Kella entered with the confidence of someone who'd been in countless dangerous situations and survived them all. She glanced around the room, her gaze lingering briefly on Nisara's obvious bioluminescence before settling on the datapad Jaren had left on the table. Financial troubles, she observed. Understandable. Running costs credits, and you can't exactly take salvage jobs with a walking treasure map as your companion. She sat down uninvited. But that's the least of your problems. What do you want? Jaren demanded, his hand resting on his concealed weapon. Kella pulled out a small holo projector and activated it. Images appeared in the air, schematics of ancient structures, star charts, and what looked like genetic sequences. The data encoded in Nisara isn't just locations of sacred sites. It's access codes. The Valari elders didn't just hide their treasures. They locked them behind genetic keys. Only someone with the complete sequence can unlock them. Nisara's patterns shifted to alarmed orange. How do you know this? Because I worked for the people who discovered it, Kella said. The Syndicate of Collective Progress. They're not criminals, at least not officially. They're a research collective funded by multiple governments. When the Valari plague hit, they saw an opportunity. They began harvesting genetic samples from survivors, trying to piece together the complete code. Vorek worked for them, Jaren realized. Vorek worked for everyone who paid him, Kella corrected. But yes, the Syndicate contracted him. They've been systematically eliminating Valari survivors and collecting their genetic data. Nisara is the last piece of the puzzle, the only survivor who carries the complete, uncorrupted sequence. Nisara's luminescence dimmed with grief and anger. My people. They've been hunted to extinction for treasure. Not extinction, Kella said. Not yet. There are still scattered survivors, but none with the complete sequence. That makes you unique, invaluable, and impossibly dangerous to possess. Why are you telling us this? Jaren asked, his tactical mind already seeing the trap. What do you want? Kella's expression softened slightly. I want out! I've spent 20 years trading information, watching people die for secrets that should stay buried. I'm tired. But I can't just walk away. The Syndicate doesn't allow retirement. She looked directly at Nisara. Unless I give them something they want more than my silence. Me, Nisara said flatly. Your data, Kella corrected. Not you. I know a geneticist who can extract and copy the encoded information without harming you. Once the Syndicate has it, they'll stop hunting you. You'll just be another Valari survivor, worthless except for sentiment. Jaren stepped protectively in front of Nisara. And we're supposed to trust that they'll just let her go? That they won't kill her anyway to eliminate witnesses? No, Kella admitted. Which is why I'm also offering you this. She pulled out a data chip. Complete files on every Syndicate operation, every illegal experiment, every government official they've compromised. Release this, and they'll be too busy defending themselves to worry about one Valari. Through their bond. Jaren felt Nisara's turmoil, hope warring with skepticism. Desperation to end the running mixing with fear of trusting the wrong person. How do we know this isn't a trap? Nisara asked. You don't, Kella said honestly. But consider your alternatives. Keep running until someone catches you. Fight every bounty hunter and Syndicate agent they send until you eventually lose. Or, she leaned forward, take control of your own fate. Copy the data, expose the Syndicate, and disappear before they recover. Jaren sat down heavily, his mind racing through scenarios. Every option was risky. Every path forward led through darkness. But Kella was right. They couldn't run forever. I need to think, he said. You have 6 hours, Kella replied, standing. After that, I'm gone. And this opportunity disappears with me. She moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. About your people, about what was done to you. If there was another way. After she left, Jaren and Nisara sat in silence, Tico positioning himself protectively between them and the door. What do you want to do? Jaren finally asked. Nisara's patterns cycled through colors, uncertainty, fear, but also determination. I want it to end. The running, the fear, the knowledge that I'm carrying something that got my entire unit killed. She took his hand. But I'm afraid. What if copying the data kills me? What if the Syndicate doesn't keep their word? Then we don't trust them, Jaren said. We use Kella's information, but we do it our way. Copy the data, yes. But we also make copies of her intelligence files. We create insurance, something that ensures if anything happens to you, the Syndicate goes down. Through their bond, Nisara felt his absolute determination to protect her, even at the cost of his own safety. You'd start a war with an interstellar research collective for me? I'd burn down the galaxy for you, Jaren said simply. You're not just my bondmate, Nisara. You're my second chance. My reason to be more than a ghost drifting through wreckage. Her colors blazed brilliant pink, and she pulled him into a fierce kiss. Then we do this together. We end this, and then we build whatever life we want. No more running. No more hiding. Together, Jaren agreed. As they began planning their next move, neither of them noticed the microtransmitter Kella had left behind, or the way it pulsed with a faint signal, a beacon calling others to Haven's edge. Time was shorter than they knew, The geneticist Kella recommended worked out of a black market medical facility 3 levels below, Haven's Edge's commercial district. His name was Piren, a zealoth with too many eyes and a nervous disposition that made Jaren's instincts scream danger. But Nisara's telepathic scan confirmed he wasn't planning betrayal, just terrified of the syndicate and desperate for the payment Kella had promised. The procedure is straightforward, Piren explained, his multiple eyes blinking in sequence as he prepared the genetic scanner. I'll map your entire DNA structure, isolate the encoded data, and create a transferable copy. The original encoding remains in your cells but becomes dormant once copied, like a key that's been duplicated. Nisara lay on the medical table, her bioluminescent patterns flickering with anxiety. Through their bond, Jaren felt her fear, not of the procedure itself, but of what it represented. Once the data was copied, she'd no longer be unique. Just another survivor. How long? Jaren asked, standing beside her, his hand clasped firmly in hers. 2 hours for the full scan and extraction, Piren replied, attaching neural sensors to Nisara's temples. She'll remain conscious but sedated. The process can be uncomfortable. I'll be fine, Nisara said, though her grip on Jaren's hand tightened. Just stay with me. Always, he promised. As Piren activated the scanner, Nisara's body began to glow intensely, her bioluminescence responding to the deep genetic probe. Through their bond, Jaren felt everything. The strange pulling sensation as the scanner mapped her DNA, the way it felt like something precious was being taken from her, the vulnerability of being laid bare at a cellular level. Tico had positioned himself at the door, his cyber eyes cycling through monitoring modes, watching for threats. The cat's instincts had kept them alive more than once, and Jaren trusted those instincts implicitly. An hour into the procedure, Tico's eyes flashed red. We've got company, Jaren said immediately, releasing Nisara's hand and moving to the door. Through their bond, he felt her surge of alarm, but she couldn't move. The neural sensors required her to remain still. How many? Piren asked, his multiple eyes widening with fear. Jaren checked the security feed he'd hacked into. 8 signatures, armed, moving with tactical precision. His jaw clenched. Syndicate agents. Kella betrayed us, Nisara said, her voice tight with pain, not physical but emotional. Through their bond, Jaren felt her disappointment, her anger at herself for wanting to believe. Or they tracked her here, Jaren countered, already pulling weapons from his pack. Doesn't matter now. Piren, how long until the extraction is complete? 45 minutes minimum, the geneticist stammered. I can't rush it without corrupting the data or damaging her neural pathways. Then we hold them off for 45 minutes. Jaren activated his comm. Kella, if you can hear this, we could use that data chip right about now. Static, then Kella's voice crackled through. Already ahead of you, Cross. I'm uploading the syndicate files to every major news network and law enforcement database in this sector. But it'll take time to propagate through their security systems. How much time? 30 minutes. You need to hold for 30 minutes, and then the whole galaxy knows what the syndicate's been doing. They'll have to pull back or risk exposure. 30 minutes, Jaren repeated, checking his ammunition. Through the bond, he felt Nisara's determination mixing with her fear for him. Jaren, you can't fight them alone, she said. They're trained killers. So am I, he replied grimly. And I've got something they don't. What? He looked at her, his eyes full of fierce love. Something worth fighting for. The first explosion rocked the facility as the syndicate agents breached the outer door. Jaren took position behind a surgical table he'd overturned for cover. Tico crouched beside him. The cat's cybernetic enhancements primed for combat. The agents came through in a coordinated breach, professional, efficient, deadly. But they made one critical mistake. They underestimated the bond. Through Nisara's telepathic senses, Jaren could feel their positions even through walls, could anticipate their movements before they made them. He fired with preternatural accuracy, his shots guided by her mind's eye. 2 agents went down in the first exchange. Target acquired. One of the agents spoke into their comm. Valari subject located. Extracting genetic data in progress. Recommend immediate. Jaren's shot took out the agent mid-sentence. Recommend you leave while you still can, he growled. The remaining agents adapted quickly, using flashbangs to disorient him, filling the room with smoke to blind him. But they couldn't blind Nisara's telepathic sight, and through the bond, Jaren saw everything she saw. Heat signatures, hostile intent, the exact moment before an agent rounded the corner. They fought like a single organism, human reflexes combined with Valari prescience. Jaren moved with impossible grace, dodging attacks he shouldn't have been able to see coming, countering with strikes that landed exactly where his opponents were most vulnerable. "This is impossible," one agent gasped as Jaren disarmed him. "You're just a salvager." "I'm a salvager in love," Jaren corrected, slamming his elbow into the agent's temple. "That makes me considerably more dangerous," but numbers and training were beginning to tell. Jaren took a glancing shot to his shoulder that sent pain lancing through both him and Nisara, the bond amplifying the sensation. He staggered, and the agents pressed their advantage. "Jaren!" Nisara cried out, helpless on the table, forced to watch through their connection as he was overwhelmed. Then Tico launched himself at the nearest agent with a yowl that was more battle cry than feline complaint. The cat's cybernetic enhancements discharged a stunning pulse that dropped 2 agents instantly. In the confusion, Jaren recovered, using the distraction to even the odds. "Good cat," he panted, bleeding but still standing. 20 minutes, Kella's voice crackled through the comm. "Syndicate leadership is already seeing the data leak. They're panicking, but 20 minutes was an eternity." 3 fresh agents breached the facility, these ones wearing heavier armor and carrying weapons that made Jaren's pulse rifle look like a toy. Through the bond, Nisara felt his despair, not for himself but for her. He knew he couldn't win this fight. Too many enemies, too little time, too much damage already taken. "Jaren," she said softly through their connection, her voice in his mind as clear as if she'd spoken aloud. "I need you to trust me. What are you—" "The bond works both ways. I've been feeling your strength, your determination, but you haven't tried to feel mine. You're injured. Still healing." "I'm Valari," she corrected, her bioluminescence suddenly blazing bright enough to illuminate the entire facility. "We're warriors, we endure. And through this bond, I can share more than just sensation." Jaren felt it then, a surge of energy flowing through their connection, Nisara channeling something primal and powerful. Her people's ancient warrior techniques, honed over millennia, suddenly became his. Muscle memory that wasn't his own guided his movements. Combat instincts evolved from a completely different species augmented his human reflexes. The effect was staggering. Jaren moved like liquid lightning, his body executing techniques he'd never learned, powered by determination that came from both of them. The heavily armored agents didn't stand a chance. Within minutes, they joined their companions on the floor, unconscious or incapacitated. Jaren stood in the center of the facility, breathing hard, bleeding from a half-dozen wounds, but victorious. Through the bond, he felt Nisara's exhaustion. She'd given him everything she had, burning through her reserves to keep him alive. "You saved me," he said aloud, his voice thick with emotion. "We saved each other," she corrected. "That's what bondmates do." "Extraction complete," Piran announced, his multiple eyes blinking in astonishment. "I've never seen anything like that. Your bond. It's unprecedented. The genetic data shows—" "Save it," Jaren interrupted, moving to Nisara's side and helping her sit up as Piran removed the neural sensors. "We need to move, now." But before they could reach the door, it slid open to reveal Vorek Tam, his emerald scales gleaming under the facility's harsh lights. The Kethrin bounty hunter looked worse for wear, bandaged from their previous encounter, one arm in a regenerative sleeve, but his yellow eyes burned with obsessive determination. "You should have killed me when you had the chance," Vorek hissed, his vibro blade humming to life. "The Syndicate may fall, but I'll still collect my prize. Your Valari's genetic data is being transmitted as we speak. I can intercept it, sell it to the highest bidder, retire wealthy beyond measure." "It's over, Vorek," Jaren said wearily. "The data's being released publicly. There's no buyer anymore." "Then I'll settle for revenge," Vorek snarled, lunging forward. but he never reached them. Tico, moving with his enhanced speed, leaped onto Vorek's face, claws extended, cyber eyes discharging directly into the Kethran's neural pathways. Vorek screamed, dropping his blade, his hands frantically trying to remove the cat. Jaren didn't hesitate. He fired once, the pulse bolt taking Vorek in the chest. The bounty hunter collapsed, finally defeated. "Remind me to buy Tico a lifetime supply of premium cat food," Nisara said weakly, leaning heavily against Jaren. "Done," he agreed, scooping her into his arms despite his own injuries. "Let's get out of here." They made it back to the Wanderer's Hope with minutes to spare. As Jaren initiated launch protocols, Kella's voice came through one final time. "You did it," she said, and for the first time, there was genuine warmth in her voice. "The Syndicate's operations are being shut down across 3 sectors. Governments are scrambling to distance themselves from the scandal. And you two, you're heroes. The Valari survivors are calling Nisara the Keeper of Memory, the one who exposed those who hunted her people." "I'm no hero," Nisara said quietly. "I'm just a survivor who got lucky." "You're more than that," Kella replied. "You're proof that even in the darkest corners of the galaxy, there's still hope. Still people willing to fight for what's right." A pause. "Thank you for giving me a reason to do one decent thing before I disappeared." The connection cut off. Jaren never learned what became of Kella, but he hoped she found whatever peace she was looking for. As the Wanderer's Hope jumped to hyperspace, Jaren and Nisara sat together in the cockpit, Tico purring contentedly in Nisara's lap. Her wounds were beginning to heal again, her bioluminescence returning to its normal radiant glow. "Where do we go now?" she asked, watching the stars streak past. Jaren considered the question. They had the Syndicate's seized funds. Kella had made sure some of it ended up in their accounts as payment for their role in the exposure. They had his ship, their bond, and each other. "Anywhere we want," he said finally. "There's a colony world on the rim, New Terra, where I grew up. They're always looking for skilled people. We could settle, build something real." Nisara's patterns shifted to warm gold. "A home?" "A home," Jaren confirmed. "No more running. No more fighting. Just living." She leaned her head against his shoulder, and through their bond, he felt her contentment, her hope, her love. "I never thought I'd have that again. After the plague, after losing my unit, I was certain my story would end in darkness. Instead, it ended in stars," Jaren said, gesturing to the viewport where countless lights blazed in the eternal night. "No," Nisara corrected softly. "It didn't end at all. This is just the beginning." 3 months later, Jaren stood outside a modest dwelling on New Terra, watching the double sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and rose. Behind him, he could hear Nisara humming, a Valari song she'd taught him, one about warriors finding peace after long battles. Their home was small but comfortable, filled with salvaged treasures from his years of wandering and Valari artifacts Nisara had begun collecting from survivors who'd reached out after hearing her story. Tico ruled the house with benevolent tyranny. His favorite spot, a sun-warmed windowsill where he could survey his domain. Nisara emerged from the house, her bioluminescence glowing softly in the gathering dusk. She'd regained all her strength and more, her warrior's physique evident in her graceful movements. But it was her eyes that captured him, those violet depths that saw straight into his soul. "You're thinking too loudly," she teased, wrapping her arms around him from behind. Through their bond, she felt the contentment that had replaced his old restlessness, the peace that came from finally belonging somewhere. "Just remembering," he said, "the day I found you. When you begged me to kill you quickly. And instead you saved me," Nisara finished. "Lifted that blanket and saw someone worth fighting for." "I saw someone who refused to give up," Jaren corrected, turning to face her. "Even when everything was broken, some part of you was still fighting." "Still hoping?" "Because some part of me knew you were coming," she said, her patterns shifting to deep magenta, the color of profound love. "My people believe in destined bonds, souls that find each other across impossible distances. I used to think it was just poetry." She placed her hand over his heart. "But then a stubborn human salvager proved me wrong." Jaren covered her hand with his own. I love you. Every day I love you more than the day before. And I love you, Nisara replied. My unexpected hero, my bondmate, my home. They kissed as the twin suns finally set, painting them both in shades of gold and rose. Through their bond, they shared not just sensation but meaning, two souls that had found each other in the wreckage of their old lives and built something new, something lasting. Inside the house, Tico meowed imperiously, reminding them that dinner was late and his patience had limits. They laughed, breaking apart, and walked hand in hand back inside, back to the life they'd built together. The galaxy still turned. Wars still raged in distant sectors, and dangers still lurked in the dark between stars. But here in this moment, in this place, two souls had found their peace. A broken alien, warrior, who'd learned to hope again. A lost human, salvager who'd learned to love again. And a cyber-enhanced cat who'd adopted them, both. It wasn't the ending either of them had expected when Jaren first lifted that blanket in the ruins of a shattered transport. It was something better. It was a beginning.